Howdy folks, Nathan here. This is a 2025 Mercedes-Benz G550. It's the G-Wagon, and there's a lot of new components to it. But the biggest thing it has in terms of a change is something that many of you won't even notice. So one of the biggest questions, of course, is what's changed? And the main part is the powertrain, which we'll cover in just a moment. But there have been some updates to the front end, to the rear end, and to the cockpit. This model comes with 20-inch wheels with ginormous brakes, but you can get, on the base model, 18-inch wheels. And by the way, there are several different packages available. Unusual for Mercedes to have that many packages available, and that's including paint. This particular color, it's a $6,500 option, although I think it's worth it, considering it's a non-metallic, beautiful green. 9.5 inches of ground clearance. Considering what it goes up against, if you even call the other vehicles competition, that's pretty good, right? I mean, who's really going to be going off-road Rodeo Drive? Okay, I promised I wasn't going to say too much about the people in Beverly Hills. Another thing that you should know is that it can actually tow. So if you're pulling a trailer full of, shredded documents that you didn't want anybody to discover from the IRS, or let's say a horse trailer, okay. Then you can pull, look at that, there's an actual tow hitch, 7,000 pounds, which isn't too bad considering that this has a 6-cylinder engine. Now, what if I were to tell you that this is the biggest reason why many of you probably aren't going to care about this vehicle? And I'm talking about in terms of the big changes. Here's why. This puts out 443 horsepower, 413 pound-feet of torque, but it's not a V8. Oh, de Liebe. Relax before you spit your coffee out, all you G-Wagon lovers. This is actually a mild hybrid. Yeah, I know. A mild hybrid. Turbocharged 3-liter straight 6. Yeah. And a 9-speed automatic transmission. Not a dual clutch. The reason why this is a big deal is because it is a hair more efficient, perhaps, and I'm hoping a little bit more powerful for daily driving. Single turbocharger. The 48-volt mild hybrid system essentially is a start-stop system setup sandwiched between the transmission and the engine. Right there, that's where the electric motor is. So it's a starter, and it's also help. I mean, 413 pound-feet of torque is pretty good, right? If you're lucky, you'll be getting 19 miles per gallon on the highway, and that's as good as it gets. Considering you have a vehicle that has the aerodynamic qualities of a barn, that's not too shabby. But the important part is the drivability. You see, the way I look at it, this is sort of a halfway, maybe stopgap measure that Mercedes-Benz is trying to pull together between their fire-breathing twin turbocharged V8 and their all-electric version of this vehicle. This is it. I would think that a plug-in hybrid would probably be the way to go, but there's only so much tech you can do with this platform, and this is a truck platform. There's a frame underneath this thing. There's a solid rear axle. So this is, I think, a way of appeasing everybody. Here's the funny part. They're all over the streets in Beverly Hills. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even trying to be funny about it. I did some math, and these are more prevalent in the streets of Beverly Hills than the 2023 or newer Toyota Prius. I cannot believe how many of these are around there. So I think that Mercedes is like, aha, we'll make a hybrid version of it and everything will be fine. Yeah, 19 miles per gallon on the highway and we're going to be fine with the hybrid thing. Come on. The whole purpose of having this hybrid powertrain, this mild hybrid, is for performance. That 413 pound-feet of torque I was talking about, well, it wouldn't be possible without having the aid of the electric motor. A couple other things you should probably know. Now, under the hood, if you look, you're going to see this strut tower brace going up and around. Now, It's kind of cool because normally this would be on an AMG model, and this is not an AMG model, even though the way they outfitted it, they added a couple little AMG things here and there. It's not an AMG. But I'll tell you what, the best way to figure out exactly what it is to drive it. All right, once again, typical Mercedes, reverse, neutral, park, and drive, all here on the stock. That's for drive, that's for reverse, and that is for park. Watch what happens when I go in reverse though. Look at that, 3D. Oh, that shows what's behind me, the 3D setting. Did you see what I did? See what your money gets you? Imagine showing your friends how cool you are when you guys are, at Louis Vuitton. Oh, that is just so cool. Except, that's the wrong color. Mercedes, what? Oh my goodness gracious, I don't know. Maybe BMW is the way to go. All right, let's get going. Yeah, the 3D mode is still on. Keep looking at the 3D mode still going. I love it. It's not a great idea to watch this instead of driving properly, by the way. But remember I was talking about that horsepower, right? And the fact you have that electric motor. The electric motor does more than just give a little bit of boost. It actually mitigates some of the loss that you would receive when you're driving a turbocharged vehicle. This is one of the reasons why mild hybrids with turbocharged engines can be awesome. I know a lot of you guys are still dubious about the idea or worried about longevity. This powertrain has been out for a few years, and actually the powertrain itself has been well regarded. The question is, what about performance? First of all, I should probably keep this thing off the off-road thing. I'll put it on sport just for giggles, but it's really not necessary. Okay, so what we're going to do is just give it a little tiny bit of gas over at the stop sign going onto this coastal highway. And just imagine, if you would, how long it'll take a vehicle like this to get up to speed. Okay, I'm just gonna lightly go into the, okay, here we go. Holy, yeah, she don't take long at all. Wow. 0 to 60 at sea level, which if you look out that window, we are pretty close to, is around 5.5 seconds. It's just under that. I believe it. It doesn't have a problem getting out of its own way, but more importantly, it's controlled chaos as opposed to being like in your chest and beating you over the head with a Polkenschläger like it would if the V8 was your choice, right? Because that V8 is a monster. There have been some changes over the past couple of years, especially with the overall platform. For one thing, a couple of years ago, they completely redid the platform and they made this into a vehicle that has an independent front suspension. And why is that important? Well, that has to do with ride, but it also changed a little bit of what they could do with the design. For one thing, they could change the front end of the vehicle. Why? Because the front suspension was completely different. More importantly, for those of you who care, it still looks like a G-Wagon. So you still have these round headlights. Now, this is the daytime running lights right around here. And yeah, they do look cool. I don't know what else to say, they just do. The whole damn thing looks cool. These marker lights, which work, are fantastic. They're bulbous and they're massive, and from the interior, you can truly see them. I mean, look at the size of these things compared to my fist. They're huge, but you know what else they do? They actually serve a practical purpose, which is off-road. You know, essentially, where the front of your wheels are, so it makes it easier to negotiate and go through certain types of obstacles. More importantly, when you're parking and you're at Neiman, or is it Marcus, and you're at one of those stores, you're able to use these to help you get around parking issues. Now, in a minute, I'm going to show you the interior, and there's something that is really cool that actually mitigates the entire front end of the vehicle using cameras. But back to the design. This is all pretty much standard, so these flares and everything else, this is how the vehicle comes. It'll become more pronounced with the AMG version. I'm not 100% sure that I'm thrilled with the design of these. The exterior design of these mirrors is very rounded. Now, it makes sense because cameras, right? But, I mean, I don't know, maybe you'll agree with me. An upright mirror that's a little bit more square would be a little bit more in tune with the design aesthetic of this vehicle. That might just be me. Speaking of design aesthetic, look at this. Military style doors. Is it military? It's not even close anymore. It used to be once. We'll talk about that when we're driving. And then finally, I do like this heavy bump strip because you can never be too careful at Saks, right? Marker lights are huge. Really, everything's kind of oversized, but it certainly is built in such a way to where everything feels like high quality on the outside. And then come on to the back. The pièce de résistance. There's only a handful of vehicles that are sold in the United States that still have an exterior spare tire. And this one's been dropped just enough to where you can actually use the rear view mirror, but just as importantly, bye-bye, down here, you got yourself a proper backup camera, which actually works really well in a vehicle so square. Yeah, altogether, this thing still looks the business and it still looks like a G-Wagon. Another thing about this is that the driving characteristics of it are smoother than any other G-Wagon I've been in. It is like driving on a cloud, thank you to the suspension system that's in here. But just as importantly as all those things is steering. It is light steering, it's easy steering. The turning circle for a modern day SUV isn't too bad. Over the past few years, the older version of this, not the most comfortable, definitely interior wise. The ergonomics were dreadful and it wasn't very comfortable to sit in. This is a completely different animal. Remarkably comfortable to sit in, excellent seating position. I'm able to see out of the vehicle for the most part. Yeah, seeing over your shoulder with that small glass in the back, it's not the best, but oh yeah, check it out. Passing power. I totally took that Nissan Frontier down. Did you guys see that? The engine note isn't bad once you get into it, if you listen. It's got a nice little growl. There's a Ferrari. Who cares? What's up, huh? You got me a G-Wagon, yo. So the final part about this vehicle, and the most important one I want to impart, is daily driving something like this is no longer a chore. It's no longer ridiculous. It's something that you can do and have a good time at and actually be practical to a certain degree without being completely embarrassing. And I think that that's a huge plus when you think about it. Well, hello there. Welcome to my square abode. Yeah. Once again, a little extra oomph to get up there. Taller people wearing high heels shouldn't be a problem. By the way, you've probably heard this before, but you have to slam the doors on a G-Wagon. This has to do with how watertight it is. So this grommet around here is super thick, and the way they designed this is so that hopefully if you're fording water, I don't know, LA gets caught in a flood, then you should be pretty safe in here, provided that the water's not flying up over the hood. So yeah, gotta bang the doors, which is cool because there's a solid thunk when you do it. First disappointment, that, not just the chime, but when I turned it on, did you hear a big blah, 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 blah? No, you didn't. You heard a ling. Driving around regular neighborhoods in this vehicle, it sounds like I'm driving, I don't know, a four-cylinder. It doesn't sound like a beefy six, much less anything else. And that's a little bit of a disappointment for me because I'm loud. And I want to be seen if I'm driving something that's obscenely expensive like this. So, for me, I would say the engine note is one of the few disappointments I have with this based on what's going on. Okay, let's talk about what we got going here. Starting at the very bottom. This is the heating, air conditioning controls, and it's glorious. A lot of this feels like it's made out of a pewter finish. There is plastic here, of course, but these are actual buttons. This is great. So you're able to click through, and the minute you hit this, here we go, menu, there we go. You're able to change things in terms of the venting positions and everything else, which is wunderbar. You can change the fan speeds here, or you can do it down here as well. Either spot. Steering wheel heating. You can sync up the two, which I will do now. There, they're both at 66. It's actually relatively cool outside, but it's very humid. You couldn't tell with all the fog, so that's why it's like that. Back down here, rear. That's one of the few times where this shape is actually correct, because that is exactly the shape of the rear glass. The rest of this is pretty simple. Okay, this USB-Cs down here. They are now modern with the USB-Cs, yeah? You have a place here to hold your cell phone, but I don't think this is wireless charging here. That's a crime. And then you have, let me do that again for those of you who are not paying attention. I'm going to hit this button here. Bam! I hit this one over here. Bam! So these two can be pulled out of the way, which is great. So if you have a big old thing of coffee and you got a little handle on it, it could sit over there. But boom! If you have a gulp, you can put it in there, or a frappe, lattes, whatever, macchiato that costs $19 for the drink, you can put it here and not have to worry about it sloshing around your extremely expensive interior. Speaking of which, allow me to show you this. Ta-da! Nice, right? This has a haptic feedback component here, which takes you through one of two 12.3-inch screens. Now these are also touch screens, so you don't have to just use this. You can use the screen as well. And considering the way this vehicle is shaped, I actually appreciate the fact that they allow you to do both. And you can go through, you can, go to Saks Fifth Avenue while you're actually sitting in your vehicle. But you have all of these different settings. Of course, our favorite at TFL, the off-road setting. And that tells you an awful lot about what's going on. There are actually different settings for off-roading as well. Let's see here. Look at this. This is the invisible hood. I was trying to tell you guys about this. As you're driving, see the front wheels here? I'm turning to the right, and now I'm turning to the left. And what it's doing is it's shooting partially through the front end of your vehicle, essentially giving you the outline of where you are. But just as importantly, when you're at that parking lot, at that extremely expensive Sprouts, then you are able to see the lines using the off-road mode, so you can park easier. I wish I was joking, but that's really what you can use this for. I'd prefer a rotary knob. This is a barrel design for the volume. It's okay. Over here, dynamic. Now check this out. This is what I wanted to show you. So here's individual. That means that you can play with some of these components in order to make it ride the way you want. Sport, well, that obviously changes throttle control, response, and steering comfort. Once again, does the same thing. Eco, yeah, right, whatever. Okay, I guess it'll cut off a couple things to make it work better. Trail, there we go. Now we're in trail mode. Now with trail mode, the overall system, the way it's designed, is to work with, follow my hand here, boom, boom, the off-road cockpit. Yeah, so there's that, and there's this. This system is perhaps one of the most decadent on the planet for off-road lovers. Why? Because you can lock the center diff, you can lock the rear diff, and you can lock the front diff. Locky, locky, locky. Absolutely what you need if you're driving through downtown LA, I guarantee it. Especially during riots and whatnot. Okay, so you are able to lock it into low range using this button here. There it is. And if you look over here, it wants you to go into neutral. Actually, I'm kind of happy to see that, because out of all the tech that's in this vehicle, let me show you drive that. Knock that off, because I don't want to be going in low range on Pacific Coast Highway. It reminds me that, yes, there's mechanical tech in this vehicle that is required to go into neutral in order for me to go into low, which I'm very grateful for. I have here the sticker. Yep. 2025 Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. Well, it's the G550. They don't even call it a G-Wagon here, right? $148,250 base. This one, with all the extra goodies here, including that really expensive, wonderful paint job, $181,030. It's a bargain. It's actually not that much more expensive than the vehicle it replaces, technically speaking. But at the same time, some of you guys are going to be like, okay, well, there's no V8. Why am I paying more? Then you get more tech. Well, there's no V8, and the mileage is barely better. Yeah, okay, 18 miles per gallon combined isn't terrible, right, for a big brick. Well, there's no V8, and it's not making that sound. Aha! That is the one thing I would agree on. If there's a flaw with this vehicle other than the fact that it's expensive and frankly unnecessary for a majority of the places it's being sold to, it's the fact that it doesn't sound very cool. But I guarantee you, your Bardassians and your overpaid lawyers and underpaid doctors who live in very exclusive neighborhoods who drive these, most of them probably don't care too much about that. And if they do, if they need the AMG stickers and everything else, they can easily buy those. And of course, you can get its bigger brother, which is coming out pretty damn soon, and that will have the big V8 growl. Really, the whole point of this is that a lot of you guys out there will be driving an incredibly fast, very comfortable version of the G-Wagon that has plenty of power, and it simply just doesn't have that sound. And look, if you're good with that in the future, you'll be able to buy an all-electric one of these, which will have pretty much no engine sound whatsoever. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.